If you have shopped for proxies for scraping, you have landed on the same three names: Bright Data, Oxylabs, and Smartproxy. In the marketing, they all blur together. Huge pools, high success rates, every country on earth, and they are hard to tell apart from the outside. But they do not behave the same under real load, and the differences only show up once you point them at a hard target and watch the bill. Today I want to walk through how these three actually differ: on pricing, on pool types, on the targets that fight back, and who each one is really for. I run proxy infrastructure and production scrapers, so I have paid all three of these bills on real jobs, not just read the pricing page. I am going to keep this honest and grounded in what I have actually seen. There is no provider here that makes you undetectable, none that is risk-free, and I am not going to call any of them a scam or a miracle. What separates them is boring and practical: the pricing model, the quality of the addresses, and what happens when a target suddenly stops working. What these three actually sell. Start with what you are really buying, because all three sell the same shape of thing. Underneath, each one is a large network of IP addresses you route your requests through, plus a growing layer of scraping products built on top. You rent access to their pool. Your request goes out through one of their addresses instead of your servers, and the target sees that address rather than yours. That pool trust is the core product. Everything else, the browsers, the parsers, the dashboards, is convenience stacked on top of the addresses. The pricing model is the first fork. The first real difference is how they charge you, and it splits the whole market. Residential and mobile pools are almost always billed per GB, meaning you pay for the bandwidth you pull, not the number of requests. Data center and static pools are more often billed per IP, a flat rent for addresses you hold. That distinction matters more than any feature, because per GB pricing quietly punishes heavy pages and per IP pricing rewards steady reuse. Before you compare success rates, understand which meter you are standing on, because it decides your bill far more than the logo does. Bright Data, the enterprise heavyweight. Bright Data is the biggest of the three by almost every measure: the largest address pool, the widest set of products, and the deepest geo-targeting down to the city and the carrier network in a lot of places. It also has the most complex dashboard and the most moving parts, and the price sits at the top end. This is the one I reach for when a job is genuinely hard and I need the widest possible pool and the finest control, and I am willing to spend time learning a heavy console to get it. Power, at the cost of simplicity. Oxylabs, the other heavyweight. Oxylabs sits in the same enterprise weight class: a big pools, strong performance on difficult targets, and a serious set of structured data products that hand you past fields for popular sites instead of raw HTML. It leans towards larger customers and sales-led onboarding, so the entry is less self-serve and more talk to a human. In my testing, it goes toe-to-toe with Bright Data on the hard targets, and the choice between them often comes down to pricing for your specific volume and which account team you would rather work with. Smartproxy, the accessible one. Smartproxy is the one built for the rest of us. The pool is smaller than the two giants, but it is more than enough for most jobs, and everything about it is simpler and cheaper to start. Self-serve sign-up, a cleaner dashboard, lower entry pricing, and plans that make sense for a mid-volume scrape rather than an enterprise contract. This is where I point people who are not running at massive scale and do not want to negotiate a deal to pull a few million pages. Less raw ceiling than the giants, far less friction to get going. Pool types. Briefly, all three sell the same menu of pool types, and you should match the pool to the target, not the brand. Data center addresses are cheap and fast and fail first on strict sites. Residential addresses ride real home connections and carry ordinary trust, so they clear more of the hard targets. Mobile addresses ride carrier networks and carry the most trust of all, at the highest price. There are also static residential, sometimes called ISP addresses, which give you the trust of a home connection with the stability of a fixed IP. The pool matters more than the vendor. Success on the hard targets. Here is where the money actually lives. On an easy static site, all three succeed and the cheapest data center pool is fine. The differences only appear on the strict targets, the ones that scrutinize every connection. And there the residential and mobile pools pull ahead because the trust they arrive with is higher. I want to be careful here, because none of this is a guarantee and none of it is undetectable. A higher quality pool clears more of the hard requests. But success rates move, targets change, and yesterday's clean pool can degrade. You test, you measure, you do not assume. Sanam kenides on how granular you need. If you need to see a site the way a specific country or city sees it, geo-targeting is the feature you are paying for, and this is where the giants pull ahead. Bright Data and Oxylabs let you pin a request to a country, a city, and often a specific carrier network, which matters for localized pricing and content. Smartproxy covers country and city too, just with less of the very fine-grained carrier level control. Match this to the job. If you only need country level views, you are overpaying for the deepest targeting. And if you need carrier level, you know exactly why you are paying for it. Watch the bandwidth on heavy pages. If you land on a per GB plan, the silent budget killer is page weight. A modern page can pull megabytes of images, scripts, and fonts you never needed, and on a per GB media, you pay for every one of them. So you strip the request down, block the assets you do not pass, and avoid rendering a full browser when the raw HTML already has your data. I have watched a per GB bill fall by half just from not downloading images the job never looked at. On these pools, bandwidth discipline is cost discipline. For plug-in sticky sessions, the other side of the meter is when you want to hold one identity for a while to keep a session or a card alive across several requests. That is where per IP and sticky sessions come in, an address you keep for minutes or longer instead of rotating on every call. All three support this, and it is the right tool when a target ties state to your address. But hold it too long on a strict site, and a rotating pool would have been safer, so you tune the session length to the target rather than defaulting to one setting for everything. Support is a real feature, not a footnote. The thing you do not think about until you need it is support, and it separates these three sharply. The two enterprise providers give larger accounts a real person, an account manager who picks up when a target suddenly breaks and your pipeline is down on a Monday morning. The self-serve tier leans on documentation and chat, which is fine until the day it is not. I weigh this heavily, because living with a proxy provider for a year is mostly fine until one bad week, and in that week the quality of the human on the other end is the whole product. Test on your real target before you commit. Whatever the marketing claims, the only number that matters is the one you measure on your own target. So before you sign anything, run a real batch, a few thousand requests against the exact site you care about, on each provider's trial or smallest plan. Measure the true success rate, the latency, and the cost per successful record, not the advertised success rate on some easy demo site. A provider that looks great on the landing page can quietly underperform on your one difficult target. And the only way you learn that is to test before you commit. What counts as usage? Read the fine print. Read carefully what each provider actually charges for, because the sticker price and the real price drift apart. On per GB pools, failed requests still burn bandwidth, so a hard target that needs several tries per page costs more than the headline suggests. Some products charge extra for the rendered browser tier, extra for the structured data, extra for premium pools. So when you run your test batch, measure the cost per successful record, the real thing you came for, not the cost per request, because on a difficult target those two numbers can be very far apart. The compliance gate is a feature now. One change worth calling out. All three now gate their residential and mobile pools behind a verification and use case review. You tell them who you are and what you are collecting before they turn the good pools on. People treat this as friction, but I read it as a good sign, because a provider that checks its customers is a provider trying to keep its pool clean and its business durable. It also keeps you honest. Public data, allowed targets, nothing personal or behind a login. A provider that hands anyone the keys with no questions is the one heading for trouble. The honest overlap. Here is the part the comparison articles skip. On the majority of ordinary jobs, these three are basically interchangeable, and you should just pick the cheapest one that clears your target and move on. The differences I have described only start to matter at the edges. The genuinely hard targets, the very high volumes, the need for carrier-level geo-targeting, or the moment you need a human when something breaks. If your scrape is modest and your target is not fighting you, do not agonize over this choice. The wrong pick on an easy job costs you a little money, not the project. Who each one is for. So who is each one for? Bright data is for the operator who needs the widest pool and the deepest control, and will pay for it. Big jobs, hard targets, and someone who can handle a heavy console. Oxylabs is for a similar enterprise buyer who wants strong performance and structured data products and prefers a sales-led relationship with real support. Smartproxy is for everyone else, the mid-volume scraper who wants a clean dashboard, honest entry pricing, and enough pool to get real work done without an enterprise contract. Match the tool to your scale, not to the loudest marketing. I run this infrastructure in production myself, my own mobile proxies alongside these services on real jobs, so this is a tested comparison and not a vendor pitch. If you want the full versions, the honest reviews with the pricing math, the measured success rates on real targets, and the picks I actually use are at dataresearchtools.com, with no undetectable promises and no guaranteed results. The whole decision comes down to matching your volume and your target to the right pool and the right meter. And once you frame it that way, the choice usually makes itself. Then E4. All three rent you a pool of addresses with products stacked on top. And the first fork is the meter, per GB for residential and mobile, per IP for data center and static. Bright data brings the widest pool and deepest control. Oxylabs matches it with strong structured data and enterprise support. And Smartproxy wins on simplicity and price for mid-volume work. Match the pool to the target. Test on your real site. Watch the cost per successful record and pick the cheapest one that clears the job. Subscribe for a new scraping infrastructure breakdown, and I'll see you in the next one.